All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again on our Friday National Coalition meeting. Happy to have you all here with us. Just want to review a couple things before we get started. If you can kindly mute yourself until you have something you would like to contribute to the discussion, that would be fantastic. That way we're not disrupting other speakers with some side noise. Just to let you know, the video recording has started already, so if anybody has missed the meeting, they are able to view what we discussed today. Now, usually we start off with Chris, who does our government update, but Chris is unable to join us today. So I'll just do a quick run through with the things that have been going on. As you know from last week's call, the wage subsidy has increased to another month. There aren't any more details that are available yet, but we will make sure that we provide the details as they come in. When it comes to CURB, Cruise, and SEBA, there has been just a couple updates on how much they've been used. So that's something that I'll send out with the recording of this video during the end of the call. So with that, I do want to bring up a point that Angela brought to us just the other day. Angela, if you would like to bring up your point and then see if there's appetite for discussion on that.
Okay, I think I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. The point is that a lot of us are operating probably around 70% of our former revenue, and at least here in BC we are doing relatively well. The problem is with the wage subsidy, you have to have a loss of 70%. You only can have your former revenue at 30%. So unfortunately, yesterday there was something in the news, and I didn't hear it. My husband heard it, that they are potentially adjusting the wage subsidy accordingly. There will be some changes coming, not only extending it, but for those of us who, operate like slightly above what the threshold, they may not get 75%. They may get a little less. So I don't know if there is something we can do as an organization to lobby for that. I think Natalie brought it at one point up to get the wage subsidy actually slowly taken off, like down to 60%, down to 50%, and until sometime next year when we hopefully are all back to 100%. So if anybody has any ideas there, that would be appreciated.
We had, just to clarify, in the first asks that we had sent the Quebec government, we had requested 75% of wage and rent subsidy for the first 6 months, and then another 6 months at 50%. So that document still exists. As we do need to re-pitch the financial support, if everybody's okay with that, I can pop it into detail and send it to everybody in English to see if it's something that you want to use in your provinces. But that was our original ask weeks and weeks and weeks ago when we first communicated with the government.
Great, thank you. Another thing I do want to mention when we're looking at the government updates is that CFIB has made a wish list going into talking about rent and rent control. So there's an article that they posted that I will just put into the chat box there if you wanted to take a look at that and see if that is of any benefit to you as well. On another note, as you know, we have been creating these coalitions throughout different provinces. So as of this morning, we actually have had Anytime Fitness. They created a letter on behalf of the United States that they sent out to their governors, and they created a Canadian version for FIC. So this letter itself is for premiers that different provincial coalitions can use when it comes to creating tools with why gyms should remain open. So if it comes to the point where we are in a situation where gyms are looking to close or being shut down, there's a letter that you can use as backing. There's some research associated with that. So that's something that I will circulate and I can put on FIC letterhead so that you have that as a piece in your toolkit. So assuming everybody will be interested in having that just as a piece of document in case they need it, we will make sure that we get that to you as well.
If you can pop that over to us to translate, Tricia, that'd be great.
Yes, will do for sure.
When I say us, I mean Charlie. But
great, will do. All right, so if anybody had a chance to visit the or view the what was it, the webinar that the WHO put on through URSA this week, they did speak quite a bit about how we are moving forward, what things are like for fitness clubs. And there are a couple articles that were also new from URSA that were put out this week. So I will make sure that I circulate that to this group as well. Now, if you are on our FIC mailing list, which I'm pretty sure most of you are, this morning you would have received a document, or not a document, a survey. A survey, and this is the survey for operators. So if you recall on last week's call, we asked a number of questions to operators about how reopenings are going, if you have reopened, how many people have come back, your outlook on this, what type of messaging you're using. If you could kindly complete the survey, and I'll add the survey right now into the chat box too. Even take a minute to do it right now. It's not a very long survey. There's 12 questions, multiple choice as well as short answer. If you could do that, that would be very helpful for information for the industry, and that will actually be able to assist us moving forward to different meetings when it comes to figuring out what type of topics are going to be important to discuss. Because I know we go through a lot of material during these meetings, and sometimes we don't have the opportunity to hit all topics, but this way we can put in different topics that are important to everybody in the queue and make sure that they are something that we do focus on. So please take a minute to go through that survey for us. Now, the next thing that we have on our list is something that came up last week as well. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over. I just noticed I missed a part, but we'll come back to it. I'm just going with the flow here. So guidelines for masks in fitness facilities. Last week, we talked about how cities like Toronto have mandated making sure that you do wear a mask when you are indoors, and except when you are in the process of doing physical activity. So we did talk about coming up with national guidelines that are supported by FIC. In these guidelines, what we are looking to state is just that if we do highly recommend masks to prevent spread, as well as if you are currently exercising, you can take off your mask, but we do recommend that you put on your mask when you are moving between equipment. So I just wanted to hear overall feedback about that. I know that Orange Theory in the States, they have put out statements where they are recommending people wear masks all throughout their workouts. And they actually made a great video on their social media that kind of explains what type of masks, how to pick a good mask that works for you. But for us, because we want to make sure we don't push things too strictly, that we do abide by guidelines that are currently being implemented. So any comments on that?
If I may go first, Tricia, it's Angela. We have a mask policy in any of the common rooms. Now, we are not a normal membership gym, so people are here only by appointment with personal training. Locker rooms, front desk, wandering around, they wear a mask. Just when they exercise, they don't need to. However, they need to have it handy. We have the gym cut in zones, but two of the zones, the patients of chiropractician and physiotherapists walk by. So if they're not wearing a mask at that point, somebody coming ahead, they will have to put it on. So far, it has gone well. Some are refusing, and so we offered them then they could have outdoor training. However, they will not, without a mask, train inside. Like if they are not wearing the mask in the common areas, like locker rooms and so forth. During exercise, yes, but if there's ever a moment where 2 meters distance is not guaranteed, they have to wear it.
Thank you, Angela.
So Trish, in Montreal, the discussions have taken place. It's actually the mayor of Montreal who had said that she wanted to do this. And so we prepared a letter, because it's what we do, to send to the Montreal municipality asking that it was exactly that it be that there be an exemption. And we quoted what was happening in Toronto and Ottawa, that it'd be the same thing, that coming in and coming out in common spaces, etc., but that during exercise, it was preferable that it not be the case, in the same way that they're going to have to make exceptions for restaurants, because can't put a fork through a mask. And so we know that there's going to be some exemptions in some of the places that are remaining open. For us, if this allows us to stay open, then we're okay to do it in the common areas. That's kind of our preference, rather than reclosing anything. And it's because we've had issues in bars in Quebec, mainly bars and beaches, in the past couple of days in particular. And so that's what we requested. And what we got back from somebody that works at the City of Montreal was that it would be like Toronto, except even not as strict. So we haven't had word from them yet, but there's discussion not only in the City of Montreal, but a big, big push in the entire province of Quebec. And yes, that's exactly what the request is. If it has to be masks indoors, in training at all times, we'll see how that goes. But for now, that's exactly the line that we've been following, is at entry, at exit, and in common spaces, but not during the training itself. For clients, for the actual trainers and the staff, a lot of the clubs have now put it in and are supplying it, that all of them wear masks at all times. I think more than anything else, to reassure clients for safety, because it seems to be that is actually better for marketing, reassurance, sales, etc. So that's kind of where we're at now.
And for Good Life throughout Canada, it's similar to what I've already been hearing by Angela and Natalie. Trainers and staff wear masks all the time, including group fitness instructors, until they get to the stage and teach their class. They can remove their mask, but to and from and all around, they wear a mask. Members, we're asking them to wear them until they get to the exercise, and of course, going in and out of the club. And we feel that that's going to be a way that we can also build the trust with the members that we're taking this very seriously, but it is led by example. So it needs to start with the associates.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mo. And it sounds like everybody is in line. It doesn't seem like there are very many opposing ideas here. So that is something that we will gather together and just to have as a overall FIC guideline. Now, that being said, I want to kind of segue to our next topic, which is another topic that we have brought up quite a few times during these meetings, and that has to do with representation of what is happening in fitness clubs when it comes to social distancing. And in the past, we have been kind of policing pictures that have showed up on social media. And if you see clubs that aren't doing social distancing, messaging them, asking them about when the picture's been taken, letting them know that they are representative of the fitness industry and making sure that they are actually keeping the distance, making sure that we are known as a safe space. Now, there has been a lot of talk about what we are doing. And we are, as the coalition, who are representing the industry. So we want to make sure that we do that in the best way possible. So Natalie actually came up with a positive spin on this and coming up with a positive campaign, which is a great, great idea. And that has to do with us in our coalition having the ability to post pictures of us in our clubs, in our studios, practicing social distancing, having our staffing practice social distancing, using specific taglines, hashtagging or tagging FIC, and making sure we create a positive type of a campaign revolved around fitness and distancing. So Natalie, would you like to add anything to this?
I just think it's a better way to go than to, you know, you can go try and get the negative to stop. Yes, is one thing, but I think we will be less distracted and less impacted by the bad ones if we completely overwhelm social media with the good stuff. And I think we're being a bit gun shy about it. I don't think I think perhaps the challenge is that the pictures aren't as sexy when everybody is all, and you need the giant selfie stick to try and get it in there, but I think we can figure it out. And yes, Dino, to your point, having a hashtag, having a legitimate campaign around what the FIC members are doing across the country, and tagging FIC in there, having a hashtag that we choose to do, and just posting it anywhere. And I'm kind of, because I know Mo will say yes, and CanFit Pro will support that, because I know Mo, and I know CanFit Pro, there you go, would be all over it, and essentially showing what the industry is doing, the good that the industry is doing. So whether you're still in a park, whether your club is in a park, whether you're indoors, whatever it is that you're doing, let's just post like crazy, get the members to post like crazy, and it'll overseed what we see as being negative, and will decrease the risk of that being seen by the public and by social media. So we can look into how we can do that and just start it as an actual campaign of good and positive, us taking care of people, and that preventative health piece that we keep talking about.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, we don't want to be the ones who have to police others. We want to be the ones who promote the good and promote our industry. So this is a great way for us to be able to do that. So yeah, we will create hashtags. We'll make sure we have a campaign. We'll create social posts, just general social posts too, that everybody can use and share. So by next week, we'll hope to have that to share with everybody on this call, as well as if you have social media and you're doing anything like that, please do make sure you tag FIC so that we can go ahead and share that as you are a representative of this coalition. And I know there are a lot of clubs that are already doing a lot of that already. So we have been connecting with them. I know Club 16 has been putting out great posts and great videos on that. Orange Theory has as well. So we want to be able to promote the good.
On that note, and not to jump ahead to the Ontario stuff, but one of the things that came up and that we're going to start doing in Ontario, and I think can be more of a national thing, Tricia, you and I have talked about this offline, was actually creating some content, because one message that I don't think we've gotten out too much is how much work is being done in these calls, and how much the industry is working together, and getting that message, that positive PR out about, look, the whole fitness industry across Canada, big and small clubs, have come together to get these guidelines in place and building that public trust. So in that note, at least from Ontario, we're going to start creating some content in the form of podcasts and videos and then clipping it down. Hosting some people on it. Tricia, you and I have talked about this. I'm going to send out some emails to some other people that are on this call to see if they can jump on a podcast potentially next week to do the same thing. So I think the other message that to get out is just like, hey, look, the industry is taking this really seriously. Here's what we've done over the last couple of months. We've come up with these guidelines. If you want to know, like, you know, we were the ones that proposed these to the provincial governments. We are the ones that are getting ahead of this. Your health and public health is first and foremost in our minds of getting clubs reopened in a safe way. So yeah, I think the format of like a podcast, having a couple people from this call on and just having that, like I can mediate the conversation to like, hey, what has the FIC done? What has happened in Ontario to lobby the government? How did this process happen to getting to the guidelines we've had? So the consensus from all the clubs in Ontario is we need to be getting this content out too. and it's something I've kind of been saying too, like the story of what's happened over the last 3 months around these calls on Friday in particular, and in the coalition calls, getting that message out to the public and trying to get some of the news outlets to pick it up. So we'll put that content out. I'll make sure to share it with Trisha. If anybody has connections to the news media, they are chomping at the bit for this. Like they're putting like anything out about fitness, and it's not always positively framed. A lot of the time it's really neutral, which is really even worse. Like we haven't seen too much negative press, but we have seen all this neutral press of like, hey, one person had an outbreak and 200 people got quarantined because of it, or whatever it is, but it didn't say what the potential positive outcome of it is. So I think if we do get this stuff out and get some good content, and in Ontario, we're talking to a doctor here, Paula Comfort put us in touch in a call the other day. But I think it's about getting some of the industry leaders in this video format of saying what we've done and how seriously this has been and what the process has been for us to reopen, for people to reopen safely. So we'll get that content rolling next week. And for some people on the call, like look out for an email from me to see if we can coordinate schedules and get some people on the podcast to get that video, which can be turned into audio, which can be turned into social posts, and et cetera, and just kind of roll with it like that.
Great, thanks, Nick. And then I see, Dino, you have contacts at CTV, so that's great. So we'll make sure that we have something ready for you to share with the media, because as much coverage as we can get that's positive, that's going to be key at this time. Jeff, I noticed that you are asking about facilities, asking family members to work out together, or if they are social distancing. Right now, I think from kind of the visual aspect of it, the issue is when pictures are taken and you don't know that they are family members, because there was an incident earlier this week where a photo was taken of a big group, and then they were reached out because it was quite a few people in that group kind of huddled together. But when you have social posts like that, you don't know that they are family members or if they are a cohort staying together. So it's really important that if you are posting pictures like that, identify the fact that they are family, because if you don't identify that, nobody knows, and people start to question, and that can turn into speculation, and as we know, speculation is never good. So if anybody else wants to answer the actual question of whether you are asking family members to social distance.
Yeah, I can speak to that really quickly. In Ontario, at least, in specific instances, particularly as it relates to racket sports, we have been told that unless you are dealing with immediate family members who live within the same household, the spacing has to be maintained. That relates to racket sports, both indoor and outdoor. So even out on our tennis courts, we are doing our best to enforce no doubles unless, again, you are of the same household. That seems to be the general consensus and the general approach we're taking in Ontario. But to speak to your point, Tricia, which is very, very valid, again, it's sometimes simply impossible to know what you're looking at. So for simply the optics sakes, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible, enforcing the basic distancing rule pretty much no matter what. I hope that helps out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes down to it, it is optics right now, right? Mo, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say, I've had a lot of instructors who are teaching outdoor fitness who've asked me about posting, and I've told them not to post images because, again, it's misleading. People will read between the lines and not see that there's physical distancing. You can talk about it, but I would be very careful not to post it right now. But it doesn't mean you can't take those photos for yourself, and then when the time comes, tell the story after the fact. And I think I've probably talked to a good couple dozen instructors who are really biting at the bit to put it all on social media, what they're doing. But I've told them all to not and to refrain from doing so, because it sets an example and people will misread and misinterpret. Better safe.
It might also be worth noting that some of the facilities have started outdoor classes now. And again, they're trying, it's obvious many are trying their best to maintain the physical distancing parameters. However, there are obviously challenges with everything. So I think we're going to start seeing some of those posts start to propagate throughout the interwebs. And again, it's important that we stay on top of that and keep that in mind. But keep in mind what we're looking at.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that came up. A post came through and a question asked me, like, is this okay? And it was an outdoor class, but people had dumbbells and barbells, and it wasn't, and they looked like they were segmented off, like each person was using their own barbell and dumbbell, but there was a little bit of question about that or backlash. And it's almost have to like put that post out and be like, hey, look at us doing this outdoor class, and everybody's got their own equipment that got sprayed down afterwards, or something very explicit. But yeah, it's such a tough line to walk, because people want to get that content. Like, look, we're doing this. We've got a safe outdoor class. But then, people will look at it and have that question immediately, like, wait, were these stations that they were sharing the barbell, or did everyone have their own barbell? You might have to just put that in the actual post, like explicitly state that in the post description or whatever.
Or put the province in the actual post, because let's remember every province has, because what Mo just talked about, the instructors, if they're socially distanced, that would be totally okay in Quebec right now. Outdoor socially distanced photos would be perfectly fine. So maybe we can at least include the province in those posts, especially if we want FIC to repost it, because some people in Ontario might be like, what's happening, versus here and in BC be perfectly okay. So I also don't want to create this thing where everybody's, the unintended consequence of everybody jumping on one another. Just noticing that, and maybe it's just we follow the guidelines, or we come up with a hashtag that supports that and just add the province, so it's simple. But there's certain things are allowed, different things are allowed in different places, and I wouldn't want us to be so careful that we don't do it, but just to include a hashtag that highlights the fact that it's like guidelines followed, or something sexier than that, but guidelines followed and the province, then we're good to go.
COVID safe fitness, something like that. Hashtag COVID safe fitness.
Oh, that's all right. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. And if anybody has any ideas, put them in the chat box, and then we will vet the sexiest ones.
It might be worth noting as well, and certainly worth noting. I heard yesterday from Squash, Ontario. They have changed their rules somewhat. The second addendum that is allowing for now coaching within one-on-one coaching within a court. But why I bring that up is to highlight that the most important point is that the provincial government has allowed the individual athletic organizations to interpret the rules as they see fit, which leads to some broad interpretations. But I do know that as of Monday, officially, Muay Thai Ontario, BJJ Ontario, and Boxing Ontario are pretty much running back at full capacity. These are all contact sports, combat. I like that. Practice safe fitness. That's really good, Samantha. These are all contact sports, full contact sports, and there's going to be a lot of close contact. So I'm not sure how this is going to play out for the rest of us. I really would have loved it if we could have some of the representatives from these organizations on there, on this call rather. So let me see if I can reach out and get some feedback from these folks, and maybe have them join next week's call to talk about how they came to that interpretation, because obviously it's going to have some effect on the rest of us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody, and that's a great way to just let anyone know that if you know others that will benefit from this call, please let them know, get them connected with me so we can spread the word on all the great work that we've been doing. The next thing that I do want to bring up is a topic that was raised last week about rapid response plans, and if anyone here has considered any rapid response plans as of yet. So open discussion, or things that you would consider even if you're coming up with a rapid response plan. So when I say rapid response plan, I am talking about what to do in case of having a second wave, or having to shut down, or having to adjust how you are currently running your club or studio.
Tricia, one of the things that came up here was in case of infection, in case of positive COVID test, whether it be staff or member. I know some of the clubs are out there, and it's just a question of everybody not reinventing the wheel. I've had a few clubs in Quebec ask for it. I imagine the larger chains and the larger clubs certainly have it, as well as some of the smaller ones. And would there be a top 5 to 10 best practices kind of template that would be available and everybody adapt it for themselves, just so we're working together collaboratively versus everybody reinventing the wheel, because we do want everybody to be able to respond rapidly versus be like, now what do I do and have to come back to FIC. So I know I would love to send something out if anybody's willing to share theirs, and we can adapt it into those best practices. That I'd be very grateful for that.
I will investigate what Good Life is planning
I
and report.
can jump in there, Mo, and say that we do have one. I don't know what the key elements of it would be, Natalie, but I can tell you that one big suggestion I'd have is when you have one put together that's suitable to your organization, run a fire drill.
Yep.
So have the communications, all the pieces drafted that you would otherwise think you would need to deploy, and just run yourself through the scenario. How are you going to communicate with your members? How are you going to communicate with the government? How are you going to communicate with your associates? What are the things that you did when we closed in March? What did you learn from that? What were the best practices that you learned? What were the things where you might have tripped and stumbled a little bit, and try to iron some of those things out and just capture them in a document? I think each organization is going to be unique, but I would advocate strongly, as we have here at Good Life, we've had to run that fire drill a couple times, and it's actually totally worthwhile because you see your blind spots and where the gaps are.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right, let's keep that in the back of our mind, and then we will revisit this topic moving forward. And then I think that's a great idea, Natalie, that you had about having kind of the 5 tips or best practices that we can send out to everybody, and that will hopefully kind of help arrange and then make sure that people feel comfortable if they need to come up with their own rapid response plans, and knowing what types of things are the most important things to consider. Now, let's move on to our provincial updates. So let's start with BC. So I believe Jeff is on the call to speak to us about BC.
Am I on?
You are on.
Okay, sorry, I can't get the video to work. That's okay. Not too much going on. I just actually, though, read a article which kind of just ties into what we were just speaking about like 2 seconds ago about a club that was that did have a member that did test positive, and I don't know. Sorry, I missed the name of who was just speaking before, but it was a Good Life club, and they did a really good job of like they didn't have to shut down, but they're in the article that had members saying how safe they felt, that they felt it was safer than going to most other places. So the article, if you read it, was well done, and it was very positive to the industry. But the headline was gym stays open after positive COVID test or something like that. So that was a little bit kind of made it look a lot worse than it was. But the article was well done. But other than that, yeah, I don't have much to report.
It's clickbait.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw someone shared it on Facebook, and it's like, oh, I knew. It was almost like, yeah, I knew this is why I'm not going, or things like that. And it's frustrating, and it said in the health department, like, the risk of transmission is extremely low. And so it was just the headline was the negative part about it, but they did a really good job, containing it and making everyone feel safe. So that's a good thing.
Thanks, Jeff. And I'll just chime in if you don't mind for a sec.
Yeah, for sure.
We've taken an approach, and I would advocate for a similar approach for everyone, is that it's not a matter of if this is going to happen to you. It's probably a matter of when this is going to happen to you. And just be prepared. It's not, something your organization needs to take too personally, and it's a matter of probability for, I think, the industry. And as people get back at it, it's how you respond and how you treat people and look out for your associates and your members. I think that becomes paramount. And we were prepared because we did run those fire drills and we did have everything in place before we opened. So again, another reminder to do that. And to follow up on that point, I didn't mention it earlier, and it'll save me from typing it into the side, but also for those really important situations that can happen in fitness clubs where there's an emergency, like a cardiac event, I think you should have response plans in place to make sure that you have the right PPE and processes in place so the people that are doing the responding don't hesitate. They feel comfortable and they understand that their safety's first. The safety of the member or associate that might be at risk is not only secondary, but how to approach that situation and have the right tools and resources and training in your club so that it can make a difference in someone's life in a very critical moment. That's just another piece of advice, another thing that we had to put together as well.
And for those who don't know the voice, it's Jeff Van Haren. He's a senior vice president at Good Life Fitness and has led up our task force for this entire COVID-19. So his knowledge is extensive, and it's been probably 24/7 on this for Good Life. So thanks, Jeff, for being part of this coalition.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Let's move to Alberta. Do we have anybody on the call from Alberta? I believe Blake was going to take it today, but I don't see him on this call. So if there's anybody else who wants to speak to what's happening for Alberta? Well, we can skip over if we want to come back to it. Saskatchewan, Sky. I know Sky was just on. I guess he has disappeared as well. We'll come back then. Manitoba, Dino. Oh, you're on mute here.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so Manitoba, we are, I think, 8 or 9 days with no cases now. I think we only have about 6 active cases left. Most gyms have been open since June 1st. I know a lot of the bigger gyms waited until the end of June, but as of last week, I think everyone is open except for the university. And I don't think the university plans on opening because they're not doing classes. So all the classes are moving online, so they're not going to open the fitness center, which actually has helped. A lot of the fitness centers around the university have actually increased their signups because you got 10,000 people with no gym to go to. In terms of how things are progressing, I know with my business, we're up. We have more members than we did before COVID. So we're actually have more signups now, again, because some fitness centers opened late. Yeah, other than that, I think everything's headed in the right direction as long as we don't have a fall wave happen. Research at the U of M is saying September, October, but our government's pretty stuck in the mud that they're not going to close everything again. So that's kind of what we're counting on, is that gyms won't be closed again in Manitoba, but we're not too sure about that yet.
Great, thanks, Dino. I see, Kate, you are online and you're also from Manitoba. Is there anything you would like to add to Dino's update?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to add in that our numbers here, in case people don't know, are really low. We are into our 9th or 10th day in a row of no new cases. So that's pretty promising here. And I think as long as people here kind of follow the guidelines, that gyms will continue to thrive in that environment. So it's good that Dino's getting more members for sure. The gyms that opened early definitely acquired a bunch of people from the gyms that didn't open on time. So that's all.
Great, thank you. Let's move our way to Ontario. So if Mario, you want to take us away.
I'll do my best. Not a ton to report on. We did have the Provincial Coalition call on Tuesday. we pretty much covered most of what came out of that with Nick's statement on the on getting the media involved. Nick and Paula have really was a great recommendation in that regard. The only new thing I already spoke about, which was the rulings that came out of the various athletic organizations. We're still looking, I think right now for us, best guess is to open. We're looking at end of July before we can even start talking about opening dates. I know in my organization, again, as a community center, today we just opened our pool for the first time, which was interesting because there's a host of challenges regarding that. So we've been dealing, the pool openings have been a lot of fun. And really, unless I'm missing something, Nick, if you can remember anything that I'm missing here, I don't think that's much more to report on.
Yeah, I'll chime in a bit because I just caught this on CBC. It went up right as the call was happening. They did talk about openings in Ontario, and they specifically talk about gyms and other indoor facilities. So they said they will likely be open in stage 3. All that Ford said was they would like to do it sooner than later. They're hoping it's going to be in July to announce stage 3. But one thing of note of the person who was from the province who they were talking to said they believe pools pose little risk and weight machines, spaces in which people are gathered close together and breathing heavily, such as aerobics or spin classes, be too risky. So that's not necessarily a good signal given everything that's gone on. I know there's a lot of wariness in our call from people that run group classes on, you know, what we still are very unclear. The province hasn't gone back to us. Brian's been pounding the Premier's office after the call he had with them to try and get like any type of idea, like guaranteed that we're going to be in stage 3, or could we open in now before stage 3 happens? Are they going to accept the guidelines that we proposed, or are we going to get surprised like they were in other provinces with like 3 or 4 meters for aerobics but 2 for weights stuff? That's still completely uncertain here. So that's that signal that just came from that article in CBC isn't necessarily a positive one. But it's still a very gray area. The big concern, as Mario said, was there's this other gray area where people who are designated athletes, or if they're working with a kinesiologist and it's therapy, it's okay. So people are really stretching that. As Mario said, there's clubs that are like designating all of their people athletes, registering all their people as athletes so that they can train them and have them in the gym again. And that's just causing a big gray area that is concerning. I've heard now from multiple people, even clubs very close to me, like, oh, I heard that they're doing training in there again. And is that okay? Because, you know, people are members of that gym in the community and they're asking if that's okay. So it's just such a gray area right now here. And it's a little bit concerning because we're seeing this, like people stretching those rules, and especially in the athletic realm, as Mario said, with a lot of unclarity, and the government is being super, super unclear. We're the only province not open. And no matter what we're throwing at them, they're not coming back to us and giving us any real signal. So I think the PR campaign is really good. One thing I wanted to just point out, which is funny, like, and this is a great example from like what happened in BC with Good Life. If that same positive person who tested positive in Good Life was in a grocery store an hour earlier, the grocery store has no way of reaching out to all their members, right? So like just that message of like how much, and I've tested this in the last couple of weeks with friends and family of mine who are very skeptical of getting back to the gym and saying like, well, hey, if this happens in a grocery store, or, you know, you don't know what they've touched in a grocery store, it hasn't been sprayed down, or in a retail store, like the gyms are much better prepared to deal with this. And as soon as you kind of put it that way, people go, oh yeah, I didn't think of it that way, right? So that's what sparked the conversation, part of what sparked the conversation around like, we need to get this info out in that right practical way. So I think the PR campaign and getting some video content out there is going to be a key next step. So that was just it from Ontario. Like, huge gray area, scary that there's this gray area people are taking advantage of, and we are kind of trying to self-police. But I'll be honest with you, I've reached out to a couple of gym owners that I've seen social media posts for or have come across my desk, and they haven't been super responsive to hop on a call with me. So I don't know, you know, like short of being like, hey, public health is going to get called on you soon, you know, or something. Like, I don't want to go that far. If anyone has any tips, I know Scott's done this some in Alberta. I don't know if anybody else has done this, but like, these are people who I just want to them to like not post stupid stuff on social media. Like I don't want to tell them how to run their business, but if it's coming to me and people are asking me about it, then somebody is going to take the next step. The wrong person sees it, they're going to take it to the press, they're going to take it to their public health, they're going to get inspected, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be bad for everybody. So if anyone has any tips on just like the exact wording of that email, to make sure I can get their attention, to like get them on a quick call, to be like, hey, this is what I'm hearing, this is what you need to do. I'm definitely open to it, especially me coming from being the person on the FIC and helping organize the Coalition Ontario. I'm not a fellow gym owner, so maybe it's better coming from another operator than it is from me. But I'm open to any suggestions on just like how to get that person to respond to that email on the phone, so that like we can have a good positive conversation on like, whatever you're doing, don't stop posting it on social media, or like, here, like, follow this, please follow this. But yeah, that's the only thing I can say from Ontario.
Great, thank you. And I think that's bang on, just making sure we do have like a positive campaign going forward, that we do have positive PR. So if anybody has opportunity to connect with the media, making sure that you do that, and loop in FIC, because that's how we are going to be recognized when it comes to the work that we are doing as a collective. Quebec.
Bonjour. So Quebec has been focused on two things, I would say, in the last week. One of them being masks, and we already discussed that, and so we can move on from there. The other one being the occupancy and challenges regarding finances and sales in the gyms. And so I think now, being 2.5 weeks in, or almost 3 weeks in, this is what's happening. There is a little something that I'm going to bring up regarding the challenges of the trauma and crisis and mental health in members and therefore staff. A few of the gym owners have contacted me, which is, I think, week one, everybody's super excited. And now there's a constant frustration from clients and members that are just, I think, just COVID traumatized in general, and it's wearing on the mental health of staff, and they're starting to lose staff now, because this is not the job that they've been doing for a decade. This is a completely different way for them of dealing with people, and they're finding it really tough, because it's, I mean, a lot of cancellations is one thing. I think everybody kind of goes through that in their history, when you do renovations, when you change anything in a gym or anything like that. But this is people coming in day after day after day, frustrated about any change, not knowing what's going to happen, the government imposing things, removing things. Are they going to put masks? Are they not going to put masks? They just decided to, and I know y'all are going to think it's crazy across Canada, but they just decided to stop serving alcohol as of midnight in bars. And it's freaking the freak out of Quebecers, because that's not normal here. Bars close at 3. And so it's just all of these kinds of things that are wearing on members all the time. And the staff has to deal with that, on top of cancellations, on top of it not being fun, on top of wondering if they're going to wear masks, if the instructors are going to have to do that. Are we still going outside? Are they going to change the occupancy? And so that's kind of where they're at now. And at the same time, trying to set goals to succeed. So every week a few are closing. I've expressed this for a little while now, that it's not the initial closers that we're going to bankrupt the gyms, it's the reopenings that we're going to bankrupt the gyms. And that's exactly what's happening, is they're reopening and they're just getting tons of cancellations, and the sales aren't coming in yet. So it's a little bit tough right now, I'm going to say, with all of that. One of the larger clubs here, their uniform supplier went bankrupt, and now they got to find something else, because they're hiring tons of new staff. And so it's exhausting for a lot of them. And I think they're having to do a lot of mental health focused HR right now to hold on to their teams, to keep them going, to motivate them to be able to handle those conversations. But our industry is not beautifully trained in trauma sensitive conversations, yet that's what our members are going through. And so that's kind of where the challenge is at right now here. But they're hopeful that as the weeks go on, essentially the high from reopening, the low from this will kind of plateau out. But we are getting more cases. So yesterday was the first day that we had over 100 cases in Quebec, and that's when they shut down dancing and alcohol. And so they're trying to do it because it's coming in bars, it's coming from the younger population. Everybody sees what's happening in the States, and they're reacting here in a preventative manner to hope to not have that take place. So that's kind of where Quebec's at right now.
Great, thank you. And Rob, if you can cover PEI for us.
Yeah. So we in the last week or so, we've just opened up the Atlantic bubble. So people in the Maritimes can travel around to the different provinces with ease now. When it comes to the gym side of things, you know, in the last week or so, I've noticed a few more members coming into the club, a few more kind of drop-ins coming into the club. Notice some more people coming to our yoga classes, and speaking with some of my colleagues and instructors, classes have been, you know, small overall for the last couple weeks, but in the last week, seeing a little bit of an increase in the number of participants. So I think it's a positive thing where people are starting to come out a little bit more and starting to frequent gyms, even though we've had 5 or 6 cases in the last couple of days here, which is the first time in a long time we've actually had new cases. Observation in some of the gyms, you know, some of the members who work out in the small boutiques are getting a little too comfortable in those small groups, and the social distancing is starting to relax a little bit. So staff members have to continuously remind our patrons that social distancing is still in effect. I got word from a colleague who runs a club on the other side of the island, and with the Atlantic bubble opening, he's decided to only open up his club to islanders. So he used to get a lot of day drop-ins from people coming from New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, and he's decided for this health and safety of his staff and current members, he's not going to allow drop-ins unless you are from PEI. So it was an interesting thing. And I'm definitely not the one on this call to speak to this, but Good Life in PEI here has, they're going to their next phase next week, where they're relaxing some of the restrictions for online sign up and stuff like that. But just got the email about that earlier today. So things are going well. So yeah, you know, keep you updated. That's about all I got for now.
Thank you, Rob. Great updates, everyone. I do want to revisit a comment that Dino had made earlier on in the chat about looking to have fitness clubs become essential services. And in the States, there has been a big push for that. So I don't know if anybody has seen the articles that have come out and the videos that have come out. So I'll put some of the videos that were pushed out this last week in the States about the request that fitness clubs become essential services. So if you wanted to take a look at that, please do. And I think the biggest thing that we want to make sure that we consider is the fact that we are here for the health and wellness of individuals, for the physical health and for the mental health. And we need to make sure that that is clear when it comes to promoting our businesses. Other than that, we do have a couple minutes left if anybody wants to bring up any other topics or anything they want to kind of put in our ear for next time, and then maybe we can consider for next time.
I've got a question for the group, and it doesn't have to be answered now, but something to consider. Pricing of memberships. Have you offered discounts? Are you offering discounts? Are you increased rates? What are you looking at? Oops.
I know this was brought up a couple of weeks ago, Mario, when both Evelyn and Melody were on, that are some of the larger chains in Quebec, and both of them said, we need to increase. I don't think either of them have done it, but that is where it is. I know everywhere I go, everything's been increased, and I have concerns about our industry always being gun shy when it comes to doing that, when every single service out there has increased their prices. So it's a tough call, but I think the intention or the need will be to do it, if it's that or closing. But I don't know if anybody on here or in FIC has been brave enough to do so yet.
I've heard it a little bit, and it's, if you look at like a lot of places you go in the restaurants now or somewhere like that, if you're on a patio in Ontario, that's the only place we're allowed to go, or even in delivery, you're seeing like a COVID fee or a COVID tax in a sense, or like for extra care. I don't know how the right way to frame it. If you just do a straight increase in price and say, hey, this is our price now, because that's the reality of like supply and demand. Obviously, you say it a lot more tactfully than that. Or whether you put a specific like price to it. I think that's the debate I've heard a few people have, like say, okay, hey, it's an extra $5 a month and this is covering our costs for safety precautions and PPE and everything for COVID. You make it like that. I think that's the debate I've heard a little bit, and I don't know where to settle on that, which one resonates better with the consumer. Because if it's a sort of like a COVID fee, then they know that would go down again once some of these measures are moved in the future, as opposed to just a general increase, which is probably more reasonable, because that's just the reality is that you need to generate more revenues from a smaller member base that is there now than it was a year ago or 6 months ago. So I think that's a very tough one to answer, and you know, I think that's a good conversation to have from gym owners who have reopened and seen what they've done with it. But I agree with Natalie, like waiting on it or being gun shy about it is not, you know, it's going to happen. You might as well bite the bullet at some point and just do it.
Emily, you had something. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to jump to Emily, who had something to say, and then we'll come back to you, Mario.
Sure.
Hi, guys. I've been pretty quiet here. I own Crush Camp in Calgary, Alberta. We did increase our prices. We canceled all of our memberships, and we didn't cancel them. We said that they're suspended, they're frozen in time until we get back to a point of normal operating. And so we paused all class packs, we paused all memberships, and we created a completely new pricing structure. The decision we made to do that was, we thought it was because there's so much that was changing. Memberships also no longer included mat service and showers and all these other things that used to be part of memberships, or buddy passes, you know? So we didn't even feel like it was the right thing to do, to just be like, okay, same membership, just change price. We chose people to just give everybody the new option to opt in. It was like ripping a Band-Aid, and we did get negative feedback for the first probably week or so. Not from everybody. Some were like, of course, yeah, it makes sense. I was very transparent, and I was like, this is the new operating business. Like, we're at 35% capacity and our costs have increased. So, you know, if you want to support a small business, in my case, this is what we're going to ask of you. And if it's not your time to return, then we also respect that decision. We did get, like I say, there was some grumbling, and then I sent like another clarification that was very personal from the owner to my member base, and said like, listen, like, this is, I'm going to lay it all out for you. Like, this is how it works. But what I implore you each to do is, where before you were very much in this routine of attending 5 or 6 classes a week on an unlimited membership, now for the same price, you can maybe attend 2 to 3 classes per week. But I encourage you to do that, and then accentuate with online classes, or with outdoor workouts, or with our free outdoor run club, or something like that, and to just kind of like shift your perspective of what your routine is. We don't have an unlimited pass anymore, and that used to be our top option, and we might bring it back, but of course we have such limited capacity that I'm also concerned about overwhelming our own capacity to the point where we're at max and cannot grow any further. So I guess if it just gives anybody hope, like, we have done it and it hurt for like a week, and just like mentally, and like even getting those responses somebody else was saying, like, it's tough for the team to see that, and to see people hurting. And you sure did get some emails from people who were like, I supported you, and you know, and I can't afford this anymore. And you're like, I'm really sorry, but in order for you to support me, I have to be able to support you, and to be able to support you, I have to exist in 3 months. And so this is the reality, and it sucks for all of us. But once people kind of understood that, then we've actually seen a really good uptake and a really good kind of turnaround on that. So that's just kind of my take on that.
Yeah, indeed, Emily, that's fantastic to hear. That's a powerful move, and a very bold one, and I respect that. Just to understand though, so did I hear you correctly? You canceled everyone's memberships and then brought them back on a different price point, different membership?
We didn't reactivate anybody without their permission. So essentially what we did was we suspended everything at a moment in time, exactly as it was. And then we're operating on mind body. So we created an entire new pricing option, an entire new category, and the old pricing options don't work. So our communication was, you're not losing anything that you've paid for, or you're not losing your contract, and we may hopefully reignite them. We didn't commit to anything, but we said, you know, once we can operate at full capacity, and nobody knows when that is. And people are respectful of that because they know that we're learning as the same time as they are, right? So we say in the future, we hope to go back to this. But in the meantime, if you would like to access our services, it's a totally different ballgame. It's not the same membership. We call them the stronger pricing options. And they're just a totally different model. And now, from a revenue perspective, it hurt because we cut off anything that we had, auto pay ongoing and are building up from scratch. But I also tell myself and my team and my studio managers on this call today that we're building it with people that we want to be part of our community and want to be part of our member base. And to the ones who are like, before I could pay $100 a month for unlimited, I'm like, then you're not supporting a small business. You're actually getting a highly discounted service. And that's not the type of client that I have space for right now. So sorry, but we are attracting the people who are the right people.
Wow, that's very brave and well done. Well done.
Well,
way to go,
I'm not,
Emily.
I'm
Awesome.
not through it yet, but we're working on it.
That's great. That's
I
inspirational.
will say this, I think some of you may have known, I was the founder of we did the Alberta Boutique Studio Alliance, and we had the Fitness is Essential video last month. We got some really good traction with that. My intent was that we have around 2 of that coming, which is going to start to kind of share this voice, because I think this is my belief, and I'm open to you disagreeing, but I think we need our and our clients to understand that situation and to help to be our supporters and to help to understand our reality, that we're not just pocketing this cash, that we are trying to survive for their sakes and for our sakes. And our next movement will hopefully be kind of a help us stop the bleeding. If 3 meter, I'm in Alberta where they added this 3rd meter for no apparent reason, and the guidelines actually say no distance is effective. So we're like, what's the 3rd meter for then? So we're hoping to kind of head in that direction. And one of my goals is to create a blog post, an article that explains the reality of running a fitness business right now, and just helps the people to understand that. And when I do that, I'll share it with you in case it helps anybody to explain the case.
I think that would be definitely helpful, Emily. Emily, thank you so much for that. That was a lot of good information for everyone, I'm sure. All right, so we have come to our hour. If anybody has any last minute comments, this is where I would request any ideas for our next meeting. As you know, we meet every Friday, same time, same place. So I'll make sure that the invite gets sent out to everybody. But other than that, please feel free to email me, and we will see you again next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.